Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove and I'm joined by a man who's been searching his family tree for some Costa Rican heritage. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. None yet. We'll see. We'll see how the rest of qualification goes.
Okay.
I might have to look elsewhere for some rooting interests.
Oh, so this is...
But not really.
This is our long review of USA 0, Costa Rica 2 in World Cup qualifying. We did the quick take, hot take immediately after kickoff. It was full of, I want to say, frustration and a little bit of anger and a lot of disappointment.
And some confusion.
Which it all feels accurate.
Yep.
We went back, we rewatched it slowly, sometimes frame by frame. We used the tactical cam. We've done a deep dive on this, ready to talk about it.
Yep.
On second viewing, was the US performance better or worse than we thought?
Worse.
I agree, and I'm really surprised by it. Yep. I really thought I would go back and see a team that sort of was unlucky. There was a Keylor Navas save and like one defensive mistake. But there were more problems uncovered on the second viewing than the first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I thought there would be sort of like Christian Pulisic getting knocked around or being man-marked, and that was a problem, or Costa Rica doing something like very specific that the United States just had no answer for. And they did lots of things that the United States had no answer for, but really, overall, it was just bad. I mean, that's the most basic way to put it, but it's also maybe the most accurate way to put it.
I'm going to say the one bit of positivity, there was a spell in the second half. Maybe.
Oh God!
It was basically up until Urenia scored the equaliser. Sorry, up until Urenia scored the second goal in the 82nd minute or so. There was about 20 minutes before that when the US really was on the front foot and were almost making chances.
Yeah, and I think that is...
Some good combinations here and there.
See, and this is where...
You're going to focus on the almost, aren't you?
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. When it's like... To be fair, though, there was that one period where they almost created chances, and even when they didn't, they still didn't, but it was better. They weren't actively conceding in those periods of time.
I stand by all that. All that's true.
I mean, and that's the thing. And I feel like the reference I always go to is because it's real topical and everybody gets this one. It was like Atletico Madrid against Bayern Munich in the Champions League a couple years ago. And it was like even when they started to kind of play their game, it just still was so frenetic in a non-Atletico way, but in a more like, oh, someone's coming past the ball. Someone's coming past. It just, that's how the United States felt, that even when they were stringing those passes together and having those chances, it was still like, oh, he accidentally dribbled into a Costa Rican player and then it luckily spilled to a U.S. player who got a shot off.
All right, but to stay with the positive, because this is going to get pretty bad pretty soon because we're going to start talking about what went wrong. There were some good combination plays where the U.S. sort of got someone free down the left after some good quick passes. There were moments when it looked like it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that, but I'm not trying to be argumentative here, but I don't see the point in focusing on that because I think this game was so comprehensively poor from the United States that even if there were bright moments, they were obviously, number one, few and far between. But number two, I really do think came about because of individual moments or sort of a passing familiarity with each other that Michael Bradley could pick out a run that somebody was going to make.
Do you mean passing as in ships that pass in the night?
Yes, a little bit. Oh yeah, I don't mean passing ball to your feet sort of passing. I mean sort of we've played together before, so I know that he's going to make this run.
You mean wait, don't I know you?
For example, I saw him look for that Graham Zusi bolting down the right-hand side. Bradley plays the ball 60 yards diagonal into the feet of Zusi. I saw him look for that, and he eventually hit it once in this game. I think he missed it once as well. But there were those moments, certainly. But again, I just don't think that really makes up for the poorness of the game. Now, that doesn't mean that I just want to rant and rave about how bad this game was. But it's just more so we could talk about those positives, but I don't think they would actually be of substance. Does that make sense?
It does. Okay, so let's get into it.
Sure.
We sort of thought about this beforehand. People will want to know what went wrong. What were the issues? What did the US do wrong, get wrong? What went wrong for the US tonight? And I would say you kind of saw it from kickoff.
Yep.
Which is, from kickoff, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in the first 8 seconds, Costa Rica send Kendall Waston, big centre-back, forward to win a header. He beats Tim Ream in the air, flicks it out wide, Costa Rica on the front foot from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
So they had a weird tactical plan to send a centre-back forward from kickoff, which is, it's kind of out there, but effective. And they won a physical battle, and suddenly the US is reacting to what Costa Rica is doing, and then the rest of the game plays out from there.
Yeah, and I think 2 points there. The first being that in the preview, you mentioned in the Gold Cup when the United States beat Costa Rica. It starts with a direct ball over the top, and it leads to a very good chance for Jordan Morris inside the first minute. Right, and we wanted to see the United States be aggressive from the outset. Instead, we saw Costa Rica do that, and it played to their advantage.
So we should have won the coin toss.
Yes, well, but then kind of, because in the second half, The United States did it. They went long immediately, and they immediately got a free kick, and they had a decent chance inside the first minute of the second half.
So second half was the US trying to do what Costa Rica did to them in the first half.
I think to your first point, that it's as soon as you like knock that player around, it does maybe just establish that tone. And I think on top of that, when you have Costa Rica being as comfortable as they are in that system, and the United States being as uncomfortable as they obviously looked in theirs, it's always going to suddenly be Costa Rica doing what they want and feeling very comfortable, and the United States to a man and being like, oh, do I step? I'm not sure. Do you step now? Do I step? It was just a lot of indecision.
This is, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't like to speak for you, because I know we watched the game together, but I don't want to have the same opinions as you or make you share them. I definitely saw when the US started to try and play out of the back, which is a thing they did a little more than maybe they needed to.
Agreed.
Costa Rica in their 5-4-1 that then sort of squeezes forward when they want to. They seem to be very comfortable and very familiar with each other in terms of who steps where and to whom and at what time. And there was no sort of confusion or disorganization. There was always always the plan of how we close this down. And that's what led to a lot of Jeff Cameron looking kind of like, where do I go with this? Tim Ream, the same. And the US sort of had to end up going back to Tim Howard way more than they wanted to.
Yeah, and I think...
Or playing terrible long balls sometimes more than they wanted to.
Yeah, more on that in just a moment. But the one that stands out to me, and I think this is what like made that point that you just made drive home when we were watching it, is it was Christian Bolaños was closer to Darlington Nagbe than anybody else, including Guzman. But Bolaños kind of looked and knew, that's not the guy I'm supposed to mark. I'm supposed to go mark the guy out wide. And so he looks at Nagbe and then just continues, like bolts out wide, cuts off that angle. Guzman, meantime, sprints, covers about 20, 25 yards, and suddenly both players are marked.
And Oviedo's blocking the out ball to the wing. Yeah, because they all knew exactly what would happen if they did that.
And there wasn't a moment of hesitation. Because I really do think that if like you have that sort of, ooh, shoot, am I supposed to mark? Or if that guy's open, I don't know if someone's going to get to him. If you have to think about it, then you're in trouble. Contrast
Especially
that with...
if the other team doesn't have to think about it, then you're always, however long it takes you to hold a thought in your head, you're that far behind.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and to that point, and I'm not trying to pick on these guys, although you could pick on really anybody in this team right now. But
you really could. You could pick on any US player and explain why they had a not great game tonight.
But I'm going to pick on Graham Zusi and Jorge Villafaña just for this example. That both of them, within the first 15 minutes or so of the first half, found themselves in a position where they didn't know if they were supposed to step or track a runner or mark space. And so they kind of tried to do all three, and it ended up both times with them just getting beaten. And it wasn't necessarily their fault. It wasn't that they did anything particularly wrong. It was just sort of the system broke down, and now you've got Graham Zusi with a guy he's an unmarked player carrying the ball towards him, but he's also marking a player. And do you step to the guy with the ball? Do you mark your runner? What do you do there? Jorge Villafaña had to do the same thing. Both of them get beat in those situations.
Yeah, well, this is when Zusi ended up getting back and getting that slide tackle in, and that's one of those things. I think this is why I love doing the long take. So when you watch that live, you're like, oh, good slide tackle, Graham Zusi. Yeah. I love you, right? I feel good about this. This is the dream team of Zusi and Pulisic down the right. I was suddenly feeling good about Zusi after being down on him quite a lot. And then when you rewatch that whole sequence, you realise the reason he's having to sprint down that wing and being forced into a slide tackle is that he was indecisive. He could have cut this out 10, 15 seconds earlier by just stepping up to the ball and closing it down there.
Yeah, exactly. And I promise listeners I do watch other shows aside from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I mean, you do kind of just watch it on repeat.
I mean, I do love that show, and it is kind of my go-to when I'm doing dishes. But one of my favorite aspects of that show is that there's always a plan. They always sort of have to regroup and be like, hey, but maybe we'll do this. Maybe that'll work out. Or we'll try that. And you know when you hear them make the plan.
Let's go with the new plan.
Yeah, and you know it's never going to work. And there are so many wait, what? They've gone from A to Z without many of the letters in between. They've just kind of I'm sure it'll work out. And that's what this plan overall felt like from the United States. And maybe this is where we can get into what they were trying to do. But it was just okay.
You know?
Exactly. But it would be all right, fullbacks, you guys are going to press high and you're going to help in the attack. But what do we do if they spring a counterattack? Somebody will cover. It's fine. But also make sure that you don't get too far forward because we need you when we try to play it out of the back. Otherwise, we can't play it out of the back. But then how do we press forward and help in the attack right away? We'll just do both. You'll figure it out. it just felt like there was a lot of...
Is it Dennis Reynolds there?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll figure it out. Don't ask questions. It's just... So it just felt like there was so many contrasting, conflicting plans for this game and approaches to this game that I really just think you could see it consistently with the United States, that there were sloppy passes and lack of communication, lack of awareness, and I think all of that comes from players not being entirely comfortable with what they're being asked to do.
And then there are certain moments where you can sort of literally freeze frame your TV, take a photo and put it on Instagram, like we did, where sort of all the problems with this game, I want to say they're all encapsulated in this photo.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the United States in what you can only call a 5-0-5 formation. You have how many defenders? So up top, right, you've got Costa Rica's back five, essentially, right? They've got their 3 central defenders and 2 fullbacks are back. 5 United States players are all right up on the Costa Rican defenders in a straight line. So it's like it's almost like they've paired off. It's like some weird high school dance. They've all paired off and there's 10 people standing in a straight line.
Yeah, I believe it was...
Oh, I can tell you. It's Fabian Johnson on the left. It's Bobby Wood, Josie Altidore, Christian Pulisic, and Graham Zusi pushed up all the way on the right. That's your like front 5. Then there's just gigantic gap in midfield with no US shirts, but 2 Costa Rican shirts. Owning the midfield. I'm guessing it's going to be Guzman and Borges, right? They're 2 central midfielders. And then it's Villafaña, Ream, Cameron, and Bradley, and Nagby. There's your 5, all sort of along essentially the back line. Yeah,
basically, if you want to picture it, it's almost like a 2-3-0-5 because you've got like those two center backs, then you've got Bradley, Nagby, and Villafaña. So it almost makes like a W if you're picturing it that way, but it's still like a very squashed W.
So it's W gap straight line.
Yes, exactly. We're getting into weird coding, I think. I'm not really sure.
It's W gap M dash.
Sure.
M dash is the longest dash you can have.
People are loving these references, I'm sure.
Copy editors will know. Shout out to my copy editors out there.
But to your point that, yes, I mean, you've got this situation in which, like, it seems like half the team has been told, everybody run long. And then the other half are like, wait, no, we're building out of the back, remember?
Yeah, so, okay, but how? Like, this can't be just some, like, this isn't a weird joke we're making. This is actually what happened, is you had 5 people pushed up, way up on Costa Rica. Obviously, if you're pushed up right next to a defender, you're looking for a ball in behind, right? That's the only way that's going, is if you're pushed up right on the line. And then a huge gap and literally no one in midfield. And then sort of your midfielders almost on top of your defenders in the defensive half. How does that come about?
I mean, I think it comes...
I did the hand claps.
I genuinely think that there are probably 30 different explanations for this. So I will do my best to say the ones that I like most believe. But I think, again, what this speaks to is that we have an idea of what the United States was trying to do, but I can't tell you if Graham Zusi was supposed to be that far forward. I would say he probably shouldn't have been. I'm not blaming him here, but... If Jeff Cameron gets that ball as part of that back 5, if he has Graham Zusi as an outlet wide, then he can play that ball wide. He doesn't in this situation. So even though there are 5 guys there, he doesn't have a wide option. And I think to the point where they did occasionally get those balls through, where Bobby Wood would make runs in behind. It came about because
down that chunk a couple times. We hit Josie Altidore down there a couple of times.
And it generally coincided with one of the fullbacks being back, so you always had triangles. You could always pass to Graham Zusi. He could play it into Michael Bradley. Michael Bradley could turn and ping that ball forward.
Wait, so you saying this Zusi being way up there and this 5-0-5 thing is like it's not the normal thing? Is it like Zusi was just the one out of position here?
No, I mean I'm saying this is where I get to like the weird contrasting game plan of like Zusi, get forward, make sure you're involved in the attack, but also make sure that you help out in possession, building out of the back. Like,
I see.
It can't be both, and yet it seems like that's what they were trying to do. And I really don't believe in those moments that it's just the players switching off. I think, say what you want about these players, they're playing for the U.S. national team. They're very good soccer players. Yes, some are better than others. Yes, maybe there are other ones out there who could be playing for this team.
Yeah.
But
I guess,
still,
everybody who complains about Graham Zusi, I guess including us, if he played on your, say, Sunday team or whatever, he would destroy everybody.
Yeah, and put it
so that's so obvious it's not worth saying.
Yeah,
right?
but like put it this way. Like, you and I watched a preseason friendly of the Richmond Kickers, and a right back made the wrong run. And he made the obvious run that he had been told, don't make that run. He got destroyed. Like, he was screamed at, he was pulled back in, he got a talking to. That was a preseason friendly in USL.
And he was a trialist we never saw again.
Exactly. Yeah. And my point here is that if Graham Zusi had just done something that he wasn't supposed to do and just sprinted forward, he would hear about it. And that he didn't, again, I think it's just sort of like,
okay, it's part of the plan.
Yeah, and so I think it was supposed to be, but I think then you don't have that option out wide, so you kind of can't get those triangles going. I think on top of that, you have what was theoretically a 4-4-2, but became that empty bucket, and so then you have Nagby and Bradley next to each other, so then you don't have any sort of vertical passing options either.
This feels like a list of the many, many things that went wrong. Right? I'm really asking, why would you have 5 players pushed up on Costa Rica's back line? What were the US trying to do?
I think then objective would be that you play the ball long and that you catch Costa Rica. Basically, you push those numbers forward as quickly as you can. You hit them on the break. And that's where you send those runners in. You hope to catch them in transition. You try to bypass that very, very crowded midfield that Costa Rica obviously had.
See, that makes sense, right? Maybe if you're 5v5, then you isolate someone 1v1.
Yeah.
And maybe you can get Pulisic or Wood or someone with, wheels to go past someone.
Yeah. But when you wait and move the ball slowly around between the two center backs and maybe it's the midfielder and back to the center back,
this is the breakdown to
those players have made that run forward, and now they can't run any further forward because then they'll be offside or off the field. So they just stand there. And that is, number one, a problem because you haven't played that ball quickly to hit Costa Rica in transition. But it's number two, a problem because very often not one of those five was really thinking about, okay, what do I do now? How do I drop back in and help?
There wasn't like a second phase of that play, right?
No.
Like once you've gone all the way forward, you can't go further than the line because you're offside. The guy who was supposed to play you the ball hasn't been able to play the ball.
Yeah.
And I would argue that's Costa Rica stopping that happening. Ureña, Bolaños, Ruiz, they were doing a really good job of just, as we talked about at the top of the show, sort of knowing where to be and how to close the US down so they couldn't get the ball forward. But then there needs to be okay, we recycle this, and the second way we do this is question mark.
And so then, again, I think there's no real unified approach after that. So sometimes Pulisic would drop in, sometimes Altidore would, sometimes Bobby would. But again, then you've got two midfielders there for Costa Rica, and a lot of times you have poor balls coming in from Jeff Cameron and Tim Ream, mostly Jeff Cameron, to be honest. And so you have Jeff Cameron pinging a ball into Christian Pulisic, for example, who's sprinting back at full speed to try to help out. The ball comes into his feet. It's going to be difficult to handle. He's got a player pressuring him, and it leads to turnovers, or it's a bad pass. And it just felt like there, again, was sort of always that panic of I don't know what to do with this. I'm going to play it to that guy and hope it works out.
Yeah, not good enough though, right?
No.
Part of me, I worry about Bruce Arena in this situation.
Sure.
I really think, we've already mentioned, the Costa Rica plan was so sort of well-defined and well-drilled and well-organised. It almost seems like going through a few coaches, they still have stuck with this 5-4-1 similar-ish type thing and just made it work completely. And whereas the US, it seemed like we praised Bruce Arena at one point for very simple instructions, right? Just give the guys very simple instructions, execute the game plan. But this to me felt like Bruce Arena was playing chess, and Oscar Ramirez and Costa Rica were playing that Star Trek The Next Generation chess, the three-dimensional chess.
Is that Star Trek or is that Star Wars?
I think
are you talking about battle chess or whatever it is?
No, Star Wars
Wars
is the hologram stuff, right? So in Star Trek The Next Generation, I know you've seen it, there's a weird 3-layer 3D chess type thing where you have to make moves across 3 different boards that are all connected.
You could have just gone with checkers and chess here. You could have just gone with that.
This way's better. Also, I've never played checkers, so I don't really know.
What?
Yeah.
You've never played checkers?
Yeah, but let's not get sidetracked by that.
This is a revelation, sir. This is one of the most shocking things I've seen all evening.
Let's talk about that later. I'm essentially saying right now that the US had a kind of simple instruction, simple game plan, but it came up against a very complicated, well-drilled machine, and almost that machine just ate those simple instructions.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of situations, the idea is that simplicity beats an overly convoluted approach.
Yeah.
But when the quote-unquote overly convoluted approach is fairly simplistic in that everybody do what you're supposed to do and it's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
And the other team has bought into that completely. That one's probably always going to win, especially when you kind of set yourself up to fail from the beginning. And I think that was kind of obvious with that flat 4-4-2.
Okay, so I want to talk about that flat 4-4-2. We talked about it as a 4-1-3-2 before. That's
what we wanted it to be, yeah.
Yeah, so in the preview show, which would have been Bradley deep and then sort of Nagbe as one of the front 3 attacking midfielders. On rewatch, it was definitely a 4-4-2 with Nagbe trying to be Michael Bradley's midfield partner and that not really working out.
No.
We can maybe talk about why that is the case,
but
I also want to talk about the problem there for me is that we have 2 centre forwards.
Yep.
Josie Altidore and Bobby Wood up top. You really need a 3-man midfield if you're going up against Costa Rica.
Yeah, and we both
wasted a body up top is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would also say that we both wanted Darlington Nagbe to start. We both assumed he would start on one of the wings.
Yes.
In a 4-2-3-1 sort of situation or 4-1-3-2, something like that, right? So when we saw him in the midfield, I wasn't too disappointed. We talked about this in the Quick Take Hot Take, that it was okay, they've solved this. Pulisic's going to play right. That's where he's comfortable. Johnson's going to play left. Nagbe can play through the middle. When you switch to that to the flat 4-4-2, I don't even have a problem with Nagbe as one of your 2 central midfielders if you have another midfielder in there in a 4-2-3-1, then I'm more okay with it.
Yes.
And I think Matt Doyle made this...
Because really a 4-2-3-1 is 3 central midfielders.
Yes.
They're just in a sort of triangle shape with one of the... It's complicated to say on a podcast, but one of the 3 attacking midfielders, the central one, is the tip of a then midfield triangle with the 2 guys underneath.
Yeah, you got a 10 in there. It's not just a 6 and an 8. You've got a 6 and 8 and a 10.
Yes.
Yeah. And to his credit, Matt Doyle made this point as well, that like Darlington Nagbe is comfortable playing as a central midfielder in a midfield 3 or in a 4-2-3-1. Mm-hmm. In a flat 4-4-2, he does not have that much experience, and I think it showed.
And it's hard, right? Mm-hmm. So for people who've never played soccer before,
it's very hard.
Playing central midfield in a 2-man central midfield is one of the hardest things because there is so much ground to cover, and you have to cover literally every direction.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
all points of the compass.
And to go back to them, there's a reason why Atletico Madrid are able to play a 4-4-2, but also why they are the exception or why they are kind of the rarity.
But even then, they kind of have like Kovacic, Modric, Toni Kroos, Casemiro, Toni Kroos.
Did I say Real? I meant Atletico. Atletico play 4-4-2.
There you go.
Did I say Real?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I meant Atletico because I talked about them previously. But yeah, Atletico Madrid, they play a 4-4-2. And in that situation, though, they've played it so much and drilled so much and know what to do. That
they're the Costa Rica of 4-4-2s.
Gavi Koke, they know how to roll. Saul knows how to come inside. Like, they know what to do and when to do it.
They have a compact 4-4-2. That's the other thing. This US 4-4-2 looked kind of spread in many ways. And in some ways, it was like the wingers were spread wide from the midfield, the central midfielders, but also spread high as well. I mean, did you say the phrase empty bucket earlier?
I did.
That's what the midfield looked like at many, many points.
Yes. So I mean,
and it was the bucket was filled with Costa Rican players,
right? Yeah, I mean, and so to go back to the 5-0-5, I mean, that's where that comes about. Is if you don't have any sort of like vertical approach to your central midfielders, that's why we wanted a 4-1-3-2, not a 4-4-2, because you need somebody ahead of Michael Bradley that you can combine with and work off of, and not I got to play the ball 30 yards into somebody's feet, hopefully.
So can we say? I want to say this, that we should never go with a Bradley Nagbe 4-4-2 midfield against tough opposition again.
Or just ever.
Or
That's
just
fine.
ever?
Yeah, because I mean, it's not going to work against tough opposition, so what's the point? I guess is my feeling on that one. That, like, if we know it's not going to work, like we know Alejandro Bedoya is not a defensive midfielder, we don't need to be like, but what about in this situation against this particular opponent if we do this and this around him? I mean, maybe you can fine-tune that when you've qualified for the World Cup. Yeah. But right now, let's focus on like a consistent game plan that gets us where we want to be.
So who should we have in central midfield? How would you like to see it go down? Or is this maybe a conversation for later?
It's probably a conversation for later because we got much more to talk about with this game.
Yeah, we do. Okay, so what else went wrong? What else went wrong?
I mean, Fabian Johnson, if we want to talk about one player in particular.
He's someone who, again, on second watch, I was much more frustrated with. He seemed like kind of static. Or I saw, you pointed out, when he sprinted, he didn't look like at full pace.
No, he looks like a guy who hasn't played much soccer in a very long time.
10 minutes for Borussia Mönchengladbach,
And he looked rusty. He looked uncertain of what he was supposed to do. He kept trying to make the kind of like if Jorge Villafana would get the ball at left back, Fabian Johnson kept trying to make this kind of like peel off, like almost like a hook route and like run in behind, and then he would do like the first 4 steps and stop and then stand. And that was the thing that was so surprising to me, is that there wasn't a lot of dynamic movement. It was a lot of, I'll run 6 yards, I didn't get the ball, I'm going to stand here now. This is where I belong.
And so the thing that worried me is, obviously your left back and your left midfielder, you want some sort of connection, some sort of overlapping run, some sort of like dynamic situation between them. And normally you get that by Villafana would overlap Johnson, or there'd be some sort of interplay and Johnson would overlap Villafana, and you'd work your way down the wing that way, right? And then there were various variations of that as you do it. But what Johnson did, I want to say every time, is that run you just talked about, where if he would give the ball to Villafana, he wouldn't stay wide and go down the wing. He would try that sort of interior run where he goes and stands next to Costa Rican central defenders and then tries that hook run in behind. And it never worked once. And I know he's good at that. We've seen him do it before, but it never worked once, and he just kept doing it. There was no sort of like, this isn't working, we'll try something else instead. He just kept it's like hitting your head against a wall, like expecting the wall to collapse.
Yeah, I mean, it was far and away the worst game I've ever seen him play for the U.S., and maybe ever. I mean, because I've seen him way more for the U.S. than I have for Gladbach. But I just couldn't get over the fact that even like the times that there was sort of attacking play down that left wing, and it did seem like that was what the United States were trying to establish. Didn't really work, but they were trying to. More on that in just a second. But like 2 times the United States got the ball into a crossing position, and both times it was Jorge Villafana. And it was him making a run after Fabian Johnson had either drift centrally, as you mentioned, or made that peeling run and then gone wide and then stood there, and then Villafana ran through. And maybe if you wanted to be generous, you could say, well, at least he opened up space, he being Fabian Johnson. But again, I don't think it was intentional. I think it was Villafaña being like, okay, fine, I'll go then. And it just, I couldn't get over how just out of sorts. And I'm not sure if that is because he's coming back from injury or because he was frustrated by the occasion. Or maybe he doesn't want to play midfield. Maybe now he wants to be a left back. Who knows? But either way, I was pretty disappointed by Fabian Johnson.
I don't think he should have played. I don't think he was fit. Actually, it's a lot about sharpness more than anything. Like normally he's a fast thinker and makes things happen through speed of thought and clever runs. None of that tonight.
Yeah, we could just go ahead and basically define this game as normally blank, but tonight blank. Because, for example, normally Tim Howard pulls out some big saves, doesn't make obvious mistakes, but tonight that was not the case.
Yeah, okay. So Tim Howard, I think, rightly is getting some blame for the first goal. And it's because he sort of takes a very sort of narrow angle at the near post and allows Ureña a shot at the far post.
And then his footwork is very bad because basically as the shot's coming, he's like shifting his weight, so he's trying to move to the left. But as a result, both of his feet are off the ground when the shot comes. So then he's got to get his feet planted, then try to dive back across. That's why he's not able to get a hand to it.
But it's worse than that.
Yep.
Because the thing we spotted on the replay is that the kick that fell short, which is how Costa Rica won the ball back to immediately start that play where Ureña scores, that was a feature of Tim Howard's play all night
I'm worried.
long.
I'm legitimately worried.
I'm worried too. And I think it's worth saying now, the reason we're worried is when Tim Howard kind of famously got injured against, I want to say Mexico, when we lost that qualifier in Columbus. His adductor went when he was taking a goal kick. I feel like maybe ever since then his kicking has not been... So I can't say I've watched him kick until and paid attention to it until tonight. But his kicks in this game were weak and weird.
Yeah, and it's...
Which is two words you don't normally use with Tim Howard.
No. And it's worth noting here that the reason we kind of know this is because, as you said, we went back and watched on the big screen. We had the game again, watching it again.
Yeah.
On the slightly smaller screen, we had the tactical cam.
Yeah.
And so the big screen cuts to the replay or shots of the crowd or whatever. Tactical cam stays with it. So a lot of times
you the goal kicks.
You miss the goal kicks, not on the tactics cam. And he kept doing that weird sort of like lofted instep to the left-hand side. And we were trying to figure out, like, does he see something we don't? And it was pretty obvious that if you try to chip a ball there, it's going to be intercepted or at least going to be a 50-50. Yeah.
Gamboa was just winning headers out there all day long. Or instead of kicking it long, Tim Howard would kick to his fullbacks or wide to his defenders. Even when they were under pressure, he would take the short pass instead of the long kick. It reminded, I kept thinking, am I watching Pep Guardiola coach Claudio Bravo last season and force him to play at the back when he doesn't want to? Because that's what this looked like.
I mean, and like that's not dramatic overstatement. Like I cannot remember a time that he from the ground kicked it. Like, yes, he punted the ball a couple different times. There was that one Bobby Wood counterattack. But I can tell you, kicking the ball, like kicking off in football versus punting, very, very different. And it requires very different muscles. So I do just wonder if maybe he can't do that anymore. And so maybe that's part of the reason why the United States are focusing on playing out of the back a bit more.
I guess we should ask Colorado fans.
Yeah.
Colorado fans out there, if you've been watching Tim Howard this season, has he been struggling with kicking it long? Has that been an issue? And do we need to worry about it? Because you might say, it's just one part of a goalkeeper's game, but I really think it's where this first goal begins, is he drops that ball
it 100%
way too
there.
short.
Yeah.
Right? Fabian Johnson, we criticised him for his game, but he's not wrong for being so high up the field expecting a longer kick, right? Unless maybe he should have read it. But Costa Rica win that ball too easily in the air and they come straight back at the United States.
Yeah.
It starts with Tim Howard's kick.
It does. And then, but really, like 5 minutes before that, it really, I was like, they score now? Like, because it is almost the identical sequence of it's a short goal kick.
Yeah.
This one, I think...
Well, the one for the goal wasn't even a goal kick. He had the ball at the top of his own area. Right. So that's what makes it even worse that it went short.
Yeah, but then the one where it was actually a goal kick, it didn't even make it past midfield. Like, and so it was just, and then a lot of times it was like low passed balls with the instep to Tim Ream or Jeff Cameron. Yeah. And as you said, putting them under pressure almost immediately. Yeah, there was one where he plays it to Jeff Cameron and Jeff Cameron is marked. Like, it's from a goal kick, and he plays it to Jeff Cameron.
So I'm talking about. That's the Guardiola one.
On the right-hand side, and he has two Costa Rican players on him, and he immediately kicks it out of bounds.
We're not far from... The US wasn't far from being one of those Sunday teams that has to have a centre-back take goal kicks.
It was very strange, and I don't know what to make of it.
We could see Jeff Cameron taking goal kicks for the United States.
Yeah, and I would say even, first of all, that's weird, and I'm not even sure I would like that, given what he did for the second
anytime
goal.
you have to have an outfield player take your goal kicks, you're in trouble.
I'm just saying, I don't know if it would be Jeff Cameron for me, is what I'm getting at.
In case he tried outside of the foot.
Yeah. But then, like, afterwards, like, didn't Bruce Arena say, like, our distribution wasn't that great, or like Like our distribution.
We did make some saves. Actually, my only knowledge of Bruce Arena post-match quotes comes from you reading them out loud. So I only have I don't have first-hand knowledge.
Yeah. So I do wonder if it was an intentional tactic or if it was maybe playing into Tim Howard, something Tim Howard can't do anymore.
I think it was covering something that Tim Howard's struggling with.
And so again, gosh, man, and we'll talk about this in just a second, but this game definitely made me question some things. And it was, again, the first time that I was like, uh-oh, like, is Tim Howard?
Are you questioning Tim Howard?
Tim Howard a little old? And I know, like, I don't want to just, he's done so much for this country and for U.S. soccer that I do not want to say, like, one game suddenly tarnishes all that and makes me forget everything else. But
no, but when you start picking a team for the next game and wondering who's the best choice to play in goal, it doesn't matter what you did in 2014.
No, it doesn't.
Right?
And it just
otherwise, again, we would select Brian McBride to play up front.
There were worrying moments there, and I haven't looked at the stats, but I'm gonna say Costa Rica had 2 shots on target. Might be wrong on that one, but you generally expect Tim Howard to at least pull off one save a game, and maybe that's unfair.
There wasn't a big save.
Yeah,
there wasn't. Like he might have.
Well, there was, just not from Tim Howard.
He might have caught some easy shots or whatever. But there wasn't like a big Tim Howard saved us moment in this game at all.
So that was one example of the usually blank, but tonight blank. I'd say another one would be Christian Pulisic.
Yeah, so I was wondering when we would get to this. I think Pulisic maybe had an even worse game than Fabian Johnson.
How do you mean?
Just in that our expectations were so high,
right,
and what was delivered was so low. And also, it's maybe the most I've seen Pulisic look like a teenager in that he kind of lost his mental strength as the game went on to the point where he was just making terrible decisions like late in the second half.
All right, I'm with you now because I would say Pulisic did more than Fabian Johnson overall in the game, but Fabian Johnson was bad in the sense that he was anonymous almost. Christian Pulisic, I was surprised that, and I'm going to put this one on you, but it's, view behind the curtain, honestly, you in like the 78th minute were like, he's got to go. Like, it is time for him to be subbed off. Because he was doing flicks when they didn't need to happen. He was taking people on when it didn't need to, they didn't need to be taken on, or he could have passed the ball, and he was trying to do too much, and he was getting petulant, and he was leaving feet in, and he was complaining a lot, and it definitely seemed like maybe there was a little bit of that teenager left in him.
And he looked kind of weirdly uncomfortable on the ball. You know that feeling when you're if you're walking somewhere and you're suddenly aware that everybody's watching you, suddenly very aware of how you're walking. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I feel like he had that sort of feel when he was on the ball. It may have been the Pulisic cam that ESPN
the star cam.
The star cam. That's what it's called when you go in the Watch ESPN website, right?
Yeah.
All of that is a mistake. All of that did not. I'm not saying that's the root cause of why Pulisic had the worst game I've seen him play for the US. Cuba accepted tonight, but it certainly didn't help.
No.
Fair?
Yeah, no, and I think this game was worse than the Cuba game.
Yeah.
Because I think in that, you can forgive him in the Cuba game. When there's no running water at the stadium, and he's just come from like the Bundesliga where they're competing in the Champions League to that. It's a decided step down.
And he didn't grow up with the Cuban Missile Crisis, so he doesn't realize maybe how important this is.
Yeah, I mean, true. But I think we talked about it then.
He grew up with the Costa Rican wingback crisis.
Yeah. Well done. We're going to pause for a moment to applaud that one. But I think we talked about this at the time. That's how I know how big their stadium is, because I was like, he plays in front of like 40 or 50,000 people every weekend. No, he doesn't. He plays in front of way more than that. That stadium is huge. But we talked about it then, that like, for a lot of people, playing for the United States is like, it's the biggest thing you can do. It's like the highlight of your career. And for him, you could make the argument that playing for the USA against Cuba versus playing a Champions League semifinal, right. But playing a World Cup qualifier,
it's important.
You expect it to be like to elevate that game. And tonight, it was a little bit like that Cuba game, and that's why I say it was worse.
So I had the feeling a little bit that as well as the media and people like us, like hyping Christian Pulisic up and being super excited about him, there was definitely like obviously a feeling in the stadium, but maybe a feeling among the team that this is the guy that's going to break the game wide open for us. Like, you go do it, Christian Pulisic. And I think the thing that I realised is that when he plays for Borussia Dortmund, great as he is, he's not that guy. He doesn't play with the pressure of being the guy that it all depends on, right? It's more Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is that guy. You know what I'm saying? Pulisic is still like a guy who's fighting for a first-team spot, and everyone's real happy for him when he scores because the young guy has scored.
Yeah.
When Pulisic scores for the US now, it's like, that's what we want from our big star.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's a very different situation.
It is, and I think the key point that I really... Goodness, great, that's ridiculous. But the key point that I want to make here, I think I've said the key point like 40 times, but there are lots of key points.
There are lots of key points.
Yeah. Tonight especially. But you made this, or this was an argument that you made, which is that like, because of that kind of role he has with the U.S. national team, there were times when we saw him take shots that were not good ideas.
Yeah.
Like there was the one in the first half where he takes a heavy touch, he tries to make up for it, and he ends up shooting when there's no chance he's going to put the ball on frame, let alone put it in the back of the net.
Not even Marco Urena could score from that.
But maybe Bobby Wood could have scored. He was wide open. If Christian Pulisic
was Bobby Wood gesturing to his own feet, say, as in square the ball to me.
I mean, because if Christian Pulisic settled that, I guess he gets first and last. If Pulisic settled that first touch and Bobby Wood hits that first touch, it's at least a shot on frame. I would say that much. And so when Pulisic takes an extra touch, it's a heavy touch, tries to make up for it, ends up shooting wide, Bobby Wood is frustrated, but just walks away. And I do wonder if there is sort of like...
He needed yelling at.
Yeah.
He needed yelling at. That was 100%. That was asking for a pass.
Yeah. And you didn't see that a lot. I think the only time I saw him ever like sort of get a talking to was when he was complaining to the referee and Michael Bradley was like, all right, back up. Like, I got this. Like, go on.
But even then, that's more like I'm the captain, I'm supposed to talk to the ref thing, as opposed to the hierarchy of this team is such that you should have passed that ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're not saying that he's like arrogant or that he refuses to be like, but it makes me wonder if there's anybody in there who can sort of like challenge him and be like, hey man, pass that ball. I'm wide open. What are you doing?
It's also a reminder that so we held off so long because of the Freddie Adu thing of sort of not anointing the American soccer savior. And then I feel like because of the start he's made to the season and because the way he's played for the US, we're kind of ready for Pulisic to be that guy at this point. It's worth remembering how young he is and how much pressure it is to put on a kid like that. I think I said something similar to this in the Quick Take, Hot Take. You've got to expect there are going to be some games where it doesn't go right for him.
Yeah, I mean...
And when he kind of loses his cool and the game falls apart a little bit.
If this ends up being the worst game he ever played for the United States, we are very lucky. I'll say that much. Because, I mean, he's got a long way to go and there's going to be moments where we're frustrated. There might be long stretches where we're frustrated or where he's frustrated. But... I think he will, continue to be an incredibly valuable part of the U.S. team. We didn't draft him on either of our 11s, and I feel good about that. But it's
tried. I got talked into DeMarcus Beasley instead.
I still think. Well, were you going to put him at left wing back as well?
But he's going to be an attacking left-sided role.
Your left and right wing backs are going to be Christian Pulisic and Claudio Reyna. What are you doing?
Let's not relitigate this.
Anyway, so I just think that so tonight I think maybe it reminded me a little bit of when he was sort of told to go have fun and try stuff, and then he kept doing that. I do also think that maybe he was supposed to be, at least in the beginning, the one who would link up the ball in from Jeff Cameron, because I think 3 times in the first 20 minutes he made that run back, and 3 times in the first 20 minutes it was a driven, sort of off the ground, not to feet ball from Jeff Cameron that he was trying to settle.
What about the idea that Christian Pulisic got fouled a lot and the United States got fouled a lot early in this game? I know we started off by saying Kendall Waston went and imposed himself up front and won a physical battle against the United States. But then throughout the rest of the game, I'm thinking Guzman stamping on Darlington Nagbe really early on after we played that first ball. Yep. Didn't Calvo really get a good kick at Christian Pulisic at some points? Is there a chance that the US were kind of just bullied in this game a little bit?
I mean, if so, then that's a lame excuse. This is CONCACAF, man.
Yeah, I agree.
We call it getting CONCACAF'd. There's a reason. You know what to expect.
I guess maybe we shouldn't throw that up as an excuse. Almost maybe it's a thing that the United States did not deal with.
Yeah, I was going to say, we especially can't make it an excuse given that we at one point were like, they're getting nasty. They're kicking people. Like, you and I were excited when the United States had a bit of that fight in the Copa America Centenario.
I remember that game.
Yeah. But no, I think you're definitely
Ecuador.
right, though.
I want to say it was Ecuador.
Yeah, I think it was. But I think you're right, though. The United States didn't really deal with it. And that's not to say that they should have gotten up and thrown a punch or anything, although 2 different players almost did.
Altidore and Dempsey came close, right?
Yeah, but it was just, you could see those moments. So there was, we talked about this in the Quick Take, Hot Take, that the penalty that probably should have been given on Josie Altidore, Kendall Waston, he knows what he's doing. He knows he's clipping Josie Altidore. He knows he's pulling him back, but letting go just enough so it's not obvious. Same thing when Clint Dempsey thinks he's gotten a penalty. Exact same thing. The other one that we noticed when we rewatched is there's a moment when the United States are breaking. They finally get a counterattack. The ball is played into Bobby Wood. Kendall Waston is about 5 yards away from him, I think, sees that ball coming in, realizes he's not really going to be able to make a clean play on the ball, and he's probably going to get turned if he tries to close him down. He just grabs Bobby Wood. He just gets an arm around him and kind of knocks him off a little bit. Referee, let's play continue because the United States keep possession. But instead of Bobby Wood turning and going at somebody or linking, like turning and playing the ball, and then there's a series of combinations, it kind of spills to the left back, and then that's it. And so it just felt like Costa Rica knew when to take those chances and knew how to use that physicality to sort of disrupt play a little bit. And it felt like the United States at first didn't respond and didn't know how to deal with that. And then later on in the game responded with anger and frustration.
I agree with that, yeah. I want to say this goes back to something we talked about earlier, so I don't want to relitigate it go over it too many times. But this is a selection problem, I think. Bruce Arena should have known that Costa Rica were going to come out and be physical and try and kind of bully the US, and not even in an illegal way, just be bigger and stronger. And then you send out a Bradley Nagbe central midfield. There was a portion of that when we did the rewatch. There was a point where I went back and said, "Watch Darlington Nagbe here," and it's Nagbe like desperately trying to win balls, but kind of just like buzzing around, and he's just lost in a midfield of like guys who are bigger and stronger than him, and he's just no help in winning the ball back.
Yeah, it looks like a piggy in the middle. Did you ever play that game when you were growing up?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like that, where it's like the ball goes over him, he turns to try to win the header, then it gets headed back, he turns again, then it gets headed back, and he turns again, and it's just he's continuously lost in no man's land.
And he's just smaller than all those guys, and he's going to get knocked around.
Yeah.
Oh, so maybe the best use of Nagbe is left midfield, where he doesn't have to win physical battles in the center of midfield. I mean, that dictate the game.
You're right that I don't think I ever want him to be the one who's winning those physical battles, but I still think that if you partner him with a third midfielder who could help kind of contribute in those attacks or be that physical player, whomever that might be, then maybe that's a little bit of a better situation.
Isn't Nemanja Matic available?
Oh, that would be ideal.
Right, that is the guy we need.
I think he might have been capped. Could be wrong.
Put a call into Serbia.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Ring him up.
Should we take a break to let people know about today's sponsor?
I suppose we should.
Today's sponsor is Roughneck Scarves. Roughneck Scarves are the official providers of scarves for US Soccer, Major League Soccer, the USL, and the NCAA. We want to focus today on US Soccer national team scarves. They have a whole section on their website where you can buy a US Soccer scarf to support the US national team. Can you guess why I'm focusing on this today, Taylor?
I can. I think. Is it because the United States looks so good today?
It is not because the United States looks so good today, but it is because even when the United States looks bad, that's when you need to support them. That's when they need you the most.
And here's what I'm going to say. I am a very superstitious person. I will continue to wash stuff. I'm not that superstitious where it's like, oh, I played really well in these socks, so they're never getting washed until I play bad again. But I will definitely keep wearing the same, using the same pair of socks until it doesn't go well.
Oh, really? I didn't know this.
I'm pretty superstitious. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who are as well, especially when it comes to the U.S. national team. And that scarf that you were wearing that was your good luck charm, get rid of it. It's done now, and it's your fault. Go get a new scarf.
So burn your unlucky scarf that has had us lose 2-0 at home to Costa Rica.
Yeah, that's right, guy in Wichita who had his lucky scarf. This is you. This is on you.
Is this a real person or you just imagine?
I'm just making somebody up, yeah.
Okay. Go to roughneckscarves.com. The link will be in the show notes. You can click to the US Soccer section, and then you can use the Total Soccer Show discount code, which is Total Soccer Show, all one word, all uppercase.
You got it.
You get 20% off your first order.
You hear that, woman in Missoula? It's on you as well.
Okay, Tyler, are we done? Is there anything more to discuss with this game?
Oh, I mean, I could discuss or rant, because I could do either one of those for a while. More so rant, probably.
What would you want to rant about?
Well, I think I feel burned. I feel burned by Jeff Cameron, because I was very excited to see him back in the heart of the U.S. defense. I thought he would be the organizer and the one to sort of sort the problems out, keep everybody on the same page. And as I've mentioned several different times in the show already, his distribution was not great, and I think the most obvious example of that, which we have not yet talked about, at least on this show, was the second goal, which came directly from him trying to play an outside of the foot ball, like a 40-yard on the ground outside of the ball, into the middle, into Darlington Nagbe's feet, and instead it went right to Guzman.
Yep. Yeah. So the outside of the foot pass, it sounds all classy when it comes off. It looks really good, but if you mishit it, it goes straight to the feet of Guzman, and then back they come the other way.
Yep.
Yeah? I would say in Jeff Cameron's defense.
Oh, please.
30 seconds before that moment, he hit a beautiful pass which split the Costa Rican defence and put Josie Altidore in on goal. And if not for a sort of diving Johnny Acosta backwards scorpion tackle, that may have been the equaliser.
Yeah.
There was going to be a Jeff Cameron assist and US 1-1 if not for Johnny Acosta.
Yeah. And is that how it went down?
It's not how it went
down. No, but I think key point there is that you're right that he was still trying stuff. The outside of the foot pass,
and it was the last 10 minutes.
He was still trying to get that ball forward and make things happen. But that was pretty bad, and so too was his distribution pretty regularly. Yes, he had that ball to Josie, But that was maybe the only one that I can remember really working when playing out of the back.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I've just got this weird feeling that it's not like Jeff Cameron is a terrible passer of the ball.
No,
it's not all
not
Jeff Cameron's fault. I really think this is more of a tactical problem where he's been put in a situation where those passes, he's been told to find the forwards' feet, and those passes just aren't on because of how Costa Rica are closing the United States down and just how everything else isn't working. You know what I mean? So almost like desperation passes that he's forced into. And I think this outside of the foot pass is a really good example of it. Because what were his other options?
I mean, to try to awkwardly take some touches and turn the ball and then get dispossessed.
Yeah, that way Tim Ream had a couple of those, right?
I mean, that works. Whatever you want to do.
Oh. I've just realised, did we talk about on the first goal? We talked a lot about Tim Howard's kick. Did we talk about how far apart Jeff Cameron and Tim Ream were?
We did not.
For Urena to run through the middle. We talked through it on the quick take, right? I thought that was really interesting because do you remember when I talked to Matt Tomaszewicz, Shin Guardian, about Everton and about the US and about what was different under Urena? He very specifically made the point that the thing that Urena doesn't do is have the centre-backs get pulled wide when the full-backs push up.
Did Bruce Arena hear that and think, oh, yeah?
I'll show you. He's like, hold my beer.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's what happened.
So that's like a really sort of out of tactical character for Bruce Arena thing to have happened in this game.
Yes, but I would say, that was par for the course. I think it was a lot of out of character moments. And I want to ask you, because maybe I'm totally wrong, but when you're playing center back, and for people who don't know, so say there is a situation where the fullbacks push up, your goalkeeper is taking the goal kick, Gonzalo's taking the goal kick, and you're the center back. If you spread wide to be that short option, if he waves you off or obviously boots it long, what's the first thing you do?
Get back to the middle.
There it is. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure. That,
okay.
Maybe am I misunderstanding?
Yeah.
No. I'm being serious. Is there a situation where oh no, Michael Bradley's supposed to drop in? Yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. You step out wide. If the ball doesn't come, you go right back into the middle because that's where the attack's going to come from.
Yeah. Close that door.
Yeah.
Again, like on Star Trek, you got to slide the doors back together.
Okay, that one works. That one works this time.
I guarantee Ira Jersey got my three-dimensional chest reference.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of people did, and more power to them.
Okay, so we've been dancing around this Bruce Arena question as well. Does this result and this performance and how it was very un-Bruce Arena in terms of how we think about his US national team spell, does it change the way we think about him? Because I've been very pro-Bruce Arena ever since he took over.
Yeah, me too. We both have. And I think, I'll say part of that was that we were very frustrated by the way things were going under Klinsmann because players didn't look motivated.
We just lost 4-0 to Costa Rica.
Yeah, here, I'll do it really quickly.
Okay.
We had just lost to Costa Rica. Players didn't look motivated. Players didn't look like they had a clear understanding of what was supposed to be happening. Players were being played out of position. And some players who were getting minutes that maybe they shouldn't have gotten minutes either because they haven't been playing much or due to injury, whatever. That's all things that happened tonight. And so, yes, I have concerns. I definitely had a moment where, since he returned to the U.S. and there seemed to be a consistent plan and everybody was on the same page and things seemed to be going well, I was all in. But then there's this result tonight, and I was just sort of like, oh, yeah, 2006 was terrible. That World Cup was bad. Uh-oh. So, yeah, it was definitely a moment of oh, yeah, that could be a problem. Hopefully this gets sorted out. There's
a lot of things that sort of need to... It was a good reminder of when we're going to come up against, I'm guessing, some good opposition if we make it to the World Cup. There are lots of things that need to be fixed. We can't go into a World Cup, play 4-4-2 with Bradley and Nagbe in central midfield and two strikers and not expect for even a half-decent team to really tear us apart.
Yeah. And so,
so Serbia is a good example.
Yeah.
I feel like if we played Serbia, Nemanja Matic would stamp all over our midfield.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
He
would do that anyway, except this time we would just
could make it harder for him if we had a three-man midfield, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's more people to stamp on.
Yeah. And so I'm definitely not, because we lost to Costa Rica, I am not Bruce Arena should be fired. I'll be honest and say that I was under Jurgen Klinsmann, but that was after 4 or 5 years of
he'd been in charge since August 2011.
Right.
And we had November 2016.
Yeah. And it was no longer I just need some time. And I refuse to accept that players, I do not like this excuse. The players just aren't good enough. We just don't have enough talent. I don't buy that. I think that you can set yourself up, even if you're playing the best team in the world, I think you can set yourself up to at least be competitive, and you can make things frustrating. Relegated teams or teams that are getting relegated beat the champions all the time.
And I think also Costa Rica is a really good example for us, right? A lot of Major League Soccer players, I think a couple of domestic Costa Rican players. Some guys playing in Europe, like in La Liga. I think Brian Ruiz plays in Portugal, right, for Sporting Club. So it's kind of a similar mix of CONCACAF-based talent and some high-end European talent.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean...
But then they have this like really like well-drilled system and maximize everything they've got.
Yes.
Right? And that's what the US can do.
And I think up until now, I have not, at least in this second stint, I have not had reason to have consistent, considerable concerns with Bruce Arena. If a first half of a friendly doesn't go that well, I don't really care. It's a friendly. Yep. That's kind of what they're there for.
Yep. Because then we're going to beat Honduras 6-0.
Yeah, and I felt like he has done what he needed to do so far in the Hex. He has gotten the results he needed to get to put the United States in a position where they are still, even with this loss, and we'll talk more about where that leaves us going forward in just a second, but still in third place in CONCACAF. So that's not the worst thing.
Yeah.
But it has now given me pause for concern. I'll say that. I can definitely say that much.
You mean cause for concern?
No, I now say pause every time just because we get tweets about it every single time. It makes me happy. So it gives me pause for concern because it does. Because now there's a reason. Before, there wasn't. And now there is.
It gives me cause for concern.
Well, where are you on this one?
I think it's... I'm definitely not Arena out. I think that's madness, right? After one bad result, when there's still 3 games to go in World Cup qualification. But it has me thinking that like I really thought we could go forward with all right, simple plan will get the most out of people. Yep. And now I'm starting to think we need a more complicated plan. So now it has me worried that the limits of Bruce Arena are the fact that he does things so simply. And now maybe, especially watching Costa Rica in action, now I want something more elaborate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I mean, or at least like have everybody. I mean, Costa Rica, like we could have picked without really looking at the team. I bet we probably could have picked 7 of their starters.
Yeah.
Like, and then maybe there's some wrinkles in there, but we're familiar enough with their squad to know what they're going to do. We know their approach. Like, we talked maybe that they were going to switch to a back 4, but really they were never going to do that. It's always going to be this approach. And they know that. They know what they're doing. They know how to execute. You look at some of the other teams that the United States has played or been around in recent tournaments. Chile are a very obvious example. They know what they're doing. They know what their game plan is going to be.
That's another maximizing talent kind of situation.
And when we previewed Chile, I mean, we didn't even we know what they're going to do. Come on. Like, it's going to be this lineup. It's going to be the same lineup every single time. They don't make subs. It's going to be these guys. And, like, you have consistency. It builds familiarity. It builds success. And I think the United States, it's still been a little bit like, let's try this, let's tinker here. And that's a product maybe of Arena coming in late to qualify and having to figure stuff out on the fly. But it still is a disconcerting reality to be in this close to the World Cup.
Can I focus us back on the Costa Rica game for a second and say, what would we have done differently? Or what would we ask Bruce Arena to do differently? I always feel like a wise ass doing this because it's like saying, well, we know better than Bruce Arena. Obviously we don't. He's like, you know, a veteran professional soccer coach who's been to a World Cup quarterfinal. Yeah. But, you know, just to Friday night centre back it, what if you could start this game again, what lineup would you pick? I mean, we've said that, for example, Fabian Johnson, I kind of credit us with saying that he was not ready to go based on him only playing 10 minutes in the last few months. To me, he should not start.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and I had him starting in my projected 11, and you talked me out of it.
Right.
I would say that I wouldn't even. The reason I hesitate is because I wouldn't even say that you need to adjust your approach that much. And don't get me wrong, Costa Rica executed their game plan flawlessly. I thought some of their players
be a surprise, right?
Were amazing. That's the thing. And so what I mean is that I think they could have gone with a 4-1-3-2. I think they could have been aggressive in their attacking approach. I think they could have been aggressive in a press and could have put Costa Rica under pressure, made them uncomfortable. You get an early goal, and now Costa Rica have to come out a lot more. They can't quite sit back and look to hit you on the break, and they can't intermittently apply pressure. They've really got to chase. And I just don't think the United States did that. I think that they expected Costa Rica to do one thing, and when they didn't do that one thing, they kept expecting them to do it.
Did we talk about the United States' attempt to press?
We did not.
Do you want to? It's kind of painful, but we should talk about it, right?
Well, it's only painful because I still don't know if we're correct characterizing it as an attempt to press. It was more of an attempt to be like we are guardians of this period of part of the field. And what I'm talking about, or what we're talking about, is there was
you shall not pass.
I mean, kinda, right?
Oh no, they passed.
Yeah, right. Is that not how this works?
Bad Gandalf.
It was basically the one that stands out. I can't remember what led up to it, but it's basically Darlington Nagbe gets dispossessed. The ball goes back to Keylor Navas, and the United States, I think Josie Altidore and Bobby Wood go chasing people down. Christian Pulisic gets involved. Eventually, Darlington Nagbe is, but they're really just kind of standing there. It's 4 of them standing across the field, waiting for the ball to come. And we talked about what does that do? And all I can figure is that it maybe is the United States expecting Costa Rica to just boot the ball long, that they're going to try to get out of their defense. They're going to try to cause chaos in the U.S. defense. They're going to get it long, get numbers forward, make something happen. So they're waiting for that ball to go long so they can then immediately transition backwards. But what kept happening was, there's just 4 guys standing across the field. We will happily pass right through you because we're Costa Rica and we're good at passing the ball.
Yeah. And then the US, I feel like even when they tried to go sort of man-to-man pressing, Costa Rica would go back to Keylor Navas. I'm thinking of a specific moment. They go back to Keylor Navas. Bobby Wood charges down Keylor Navas. Then the guy Bobby Wood left open is just 2 passes away from being wide open in the middle of the field. Costa Rica go upfield.
It's just like,
it was a disorganized
they can pass back to him?
And
what?
Actually, that's not allowed. Do you remember there was a lot of times Michael Bradley would be sitting behind the sort of forward pressers and would almost get impatient with them not doing it correctly and would come and join. There was one time where that worked, right? They played the ball directly into his chest and off they went. And a Matthew McConaughey type break. But many more times it was just like he joined late and they would exploit the space left behind him.
And then I think
that goes to the Nagby-Bradley partnership for me again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also when you're looking at the Nagby-Bradley partnership, but also just kind of the United States like approach to defending in general in these situations, there was also times when you'd see that like that 4 that I just mentioned, or some combination of those 4 standing and waiting, and there'd be a huge gap, and nobody would be looking to fill that gap, no American player at least. And I think part of that was, again, because there was so much imbalance and indecision from the United States that nobody wanted to leave their man. Nobody wanted to go and step and put pressure on because they weren't sure if somebody was going to cover, or they weren't sure if, wait, hold on, I left this guy, but there were 2 guys here, and now suddenly it's a 3v1, and it's my fault. And so nobody just had that sort of proactive, I'm going to go out there and make this happen, let's go out there and get that ball, let's pressure, let's play. It was, I don't want to make a mistake, I don't want to leave my guy, I don't know if anyone's going to cover me, I'm staying right here, I'm not helping.
And again, I think it goes to Costa Rica knowing their system so well that their 5-4-1 like mutates so much that they always have numerical superiority. It's like a weird, those mathematicians who do like crazy things with math on the board and everyone's like, whoa, that's amazing. They're kind of like that in terms of how they keep rearranging their shape so that it always feels like you're overwhelmed.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. The one thing I would have done differently.
Is it the Hydra where you cut off one head and like 3 replace it?
Yes.
It's like you foul Costa Rica once, Kendall Waston fouls you 3 times.
The one thing I would change, especially compared to our preview lineup, I think I'll go 1 striker. I think we can't afford to sacrifice a midfield body to have like a Josie Alto or Bobby Wood 2 striker situation. Not that either of them played particularly badly. I actually think Josie Alto did a lot of good work. And Bobby Wood we talked about this on the quick take, I thought he was dangerous in behind a couple of times and connected passes a couple of times, but didn't contribute enough to be worth sacrificing an extra central midfielder. And I think that's the obvious thing that should have happened against this Costa Rica team. So that's what I would change.
Yeah, I think so. I think because like basically we've talked about this. We know Josie Alto wants to drop in, like get that ball and either hold it up or turn and then make some combination passes. And I feel like he was doing that at times, but then Bobby Wood was doing it at times. Sometimes both of them were, sometimes neither one of them was. And it just didn't feel like there was that cohesive game plan. And I do wonder if maybe if you just get rid of one of them and you go with a 4-2-3-1, if maybe you can kind of set things up a little bit more.
Or even if it's just Dempsey in sort of the attacking midfield role, then he's still like half a midfielder, half a forward. Like he adds a little bit numerically. He's a little bit different, right?
Yes. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means for the United States going forward. But first, shall we talk a little bit about the overall qualification stage?
Yes, I think it's worth talking about. There are 3 games left. Like how bad? So this 2-0 win feels bad, right? It feels very bad because it was a bad performance. But what does it mean in terms of the United States getting to the 2018 World Cup? As I understand it, they are currently in 3rd place, level on points with Honduras, but with I think 6 goals better goal difference.
I cannot tell you how tempted I am to John Madden this one and just be like, well, Daryl, when you lose a game, you don't get any points. When you win the game, you get 3 points. So you want to try to get as many points as you can. And that's what the United States are going to be hoping to do in their next 3 games. Did I nail it? I think I did.
You kind of did.
I believe right now Costa Rica, Mexico are top of the group, each with 14 points. I think that means both of them have now qualified for the World Cup. Could be wrong. Well, I know that Mexico have, and I know that Costa Rica have same number of points as them, so it would make sense that then Costa Rica have 2.
Okay.
I'm going like A plus B equals C situation here. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Excuse me. So I believe that leaves the United States in 3rd place with 8 points ahead of Honduras on goal difference.
So we play Honduras on Tuesday.
We do.
And then I think the important thing is in 5th place, it's Panama. Only 1 point behind us. So the danger for the United States is if they start dropping points, they could drop out of those top 3 places, which are automatic World Cup qualification. That's the most important thing, right? Right now, the US is in the 3rd spot, automatic World Cup qualification. If you go down to the 4th spot, then you have a playoff with, I believe, an Asian Federation team, Asian Confederation team, to make it to the World Cup.
Right.
You get into 5th spot, it's good night. You go to the Europa League.
And here's where I'm going to encourage listeners not to read anything about the simulations, the possibilities, the permutations, because saying it'll probably be fine, we just got to get a result here, don't worry, doesn't sell any papers. But saying, if we lose here and then this happens and then this happens, it's going to come out to the final day. And if we don't get this result, that's the more drama. That's the more dramatic approach.
I'm not sure that sells newspapers in America, but it might get some website clicks.
It gets more clicks. It certainly does. It certainly does. And so I think the reality is we need to go to Honduras. And I think before it was probably look for the draw because they were probably anticipating a win against Costa Rica, rightfully or wrongfully. And so now I think they're going to be going to look for a win on in terms of maybe the way they approach this game from a media perspective, I think they're probably looking for a draw from what they actually need to get to qualify.
And as I understand it, the danger is Panama plays Trinidad and Tobago, right? So say if we go to Honduras and we tie, then both of us have 9 points. That leaves us sort of even Stevens between us and Honduras. But Panama get 3 points against Trinidad because they're at home. They get 10 points. They go ahead of us. Then we're in 4th. Honduras is in 5th.
Right.
So neither team, it's almost like neither team can really draw this game and be comfortable, and neither team can lose this game and be comfortable. So I don't know what happens in that situation.
Me neither. But then, and this is where I say, you can go down that road, but then it's also worth noting that the United States still has Panama at home in the next round of qualifiers, and then Trinidad away.
Call up Paul Caligiuri. Get him on that plane.
Set piece specialist?
Yeah.
Get him on that plane to Trinidad?
Long-range strike specialist.
Let's hope that it doesn't come to that.
Get Tab Ramos to square a ball to him, then he can just hit it.
But so, the United States get the win against... If you get the win against Honduras away, you're in decent position to qualify in 3rd place.
Okay, so we'll do a full preview of that game, at least the day before. Any quick changes you would like to see? Bearing in mind, Josie Altidore is suspended.
That's the issue. And I kind of don't know what I want the United States to do. I really don't want them to just plug in another striker as much as I would like to see Jordan Morris get some minutes or maybe Clint Dempsey get a start.
Yeah.
I don't want it to just be, okay, Josie Altidore's out, let's put in another striker, let's do the same thing and see what happens. As I said, don't want that anymore.
4-2-3-1. That's what I want.
Even
if it's Bradley and Nagbe as the 2 deep midfielders, then just proper 3 attacking midfielders ahead.
Yeah.
So then it's Nagbe on the left. That's what I really want, is Darlington Nagbe restored to left midfield where he can make stuff happen. Maybe Pulisic on the right. Don't give up on him. Clint Dempsey attacking midfield. Bobby Wood ahead.
I would say, I'm going to steal a page out of your book, I would say I wouldn't mind Paul Arriola. I think if anybody's stock rose in this game, it was the players who didn't appear. So maybe Paul Arriola gets a spot. You put Nagbe at left, you put Pulisic central, and you put Bobby Wood up top. But yeah, I think you're right that maybe there's a chance we see Clint Dempsey. Not that he covered himself in glory by any stretch of the imagination.
And this is what happens when you have Clint Dempsey super sub and then he comes on and then doesn't really deliver anything, right? I mean, didn't he come on, take a free kick and just bang it straight into the wall?
Yes, that is exactly what happened. So with that said, you asked me before when we recorded the preview of the Costa Rica game, do I think there's going to be wholesale changes? And I didn't think so at the time. I still don't necessarily, but I also wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I was imagining winning the Costa Rica game and then going to Honduras.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he makes one change, or I guess he'll have to make one change. I wouldn't be surprised if he only makes 1 or 2. Wouldn't be surprised if he makes 8. It will be interesting to see how the United States responds and what Bruce Arena does to get things going again.
I've got a funny feeling we'll see Kellen Acosta. I think we won't see Fabian Johnson start. I think we might see Paul Arriola.
Yeah. But I could also see Matt Beasler. Maybe Omar Gonzalez gets a start again. Maybe we give Eric Lehigh a chance. Maybe Brad Guzan goes in goal because maybe there's an injury we don't know about or an issue with Tim Howard.
Is it possible he's hurting again, Tim Howard?
Maybe.
Again, Colorado fans, let us know. Is this kicking a new thing or is this a thing that you've seen all since the summer?
I'll tell you this much. I can give you my experience, and that, huge grain of salt. I am not Tim Howard. I don't know if you knew that or not. But I'll say this much. When I was a place kicker in college, I sprained my ankle. And I remember then, I had to try to adjust my, the way I would approach because it hurts to kick a ball when you have a sprained ankle. And so I adjusted my approach a little bit, but then I definitely had that, even when it was, back to mostly full fitness, I still had that sort of, psychological, like, ooh, if I do it again, and I just look at Tim Howard, and just the way he approaches that ball reminds me of the way he approaches the ball when he tears it against Mexico. And I do wonder if there's just an element there of like, oh, I hope I don't tear it. I don't really want to kick it long. I don't really want to strain it.
Chip to the
like,
left.
Yeah, you can
pass
just
out to Jeff Cameron.
Yeah, you can get the yips, I think they call them in baseball, where Shetland Alblock can't throw to second base or whatever it is. Like it just becomes a mental block. Maybe that's it, but again, that's a lot of speculation. But again, I have my concerns.
Ooh, okay, that's a weird note to end on.
It
but
is.
I think that's how we're going to do it.
But okay, then I'll switch it around and say I have my concerns there, but I still. I began this by saying it was the first time that I've been like, oh gosh, like we might not qualify. I still think we're going to qualify.
You do?
I still think
I'm nervous.
I want and expect a result against Honduras, and I said the United States would go there and
But what's
maybe
a result?
look for a draw, a win.
Okay.
I want to go win. I mean, that's how you respond to a loss. You go and win. You pick yourself up. You prove that you can do it, and you say like, yeah, that was wrong. I got it wrong. Like own that one. Say formation was wrong. I thought this would work. It did not work. But we're going to change it. We're going to go. We're going to get the result. We're going to look just as confident and capable as we did before. Don't worry. We're going to Russia.
Okay, there's a lot riding on Tuesday's game against
it'll be fine.
Honduras.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
And that's no disrespect to Honduras. We're going to talk about them later. We know Honduras. We love us some Honduras from our Houston loyalties.
Right. And
yeah.
Yeah, we'll be worried about Albert Ellis, is that his name?
And Kyoto.
Kyoto, yeah.
Yep.
And all those other Spanish-speaking Houston goal scorers who are sort of ruining my prediction that Atlanta would have the most Spanish language goal
DeMarcus
scorers.
Beasley's got it, man. He knows them well. We're fine.
Okay, Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me this evening and early morning.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening. We'll be back on Monday with more US men's national team talk.
You gotta slice it.